You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Monday, February 23rd, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. So glad you could be with us today for another great 2-hour program, bringing you the latest in news, interviews, research, data, information, and opinion that you can use for the cannabis community. We're here every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Hope you join us, and if you can't, you can catch us on the replay at 6 p.m. Pacific, 3 a.m. Pacific, or 6 a.m. Pacific, as well as on demand through Ustream, YouTube, 420radio.org, or podcast on Stitcher and iTunes. If there's an electronic way to get us, we're pretty much on it. Just look for 420 Radio or Radical Russ, and you should find what you're looking for. We're so glad you could be with us here today. Hope you're enjoying a fine herbal product. And if you like to vaporize those products, make sure you check out vapes.buzz, the home of portablevaporizersnow.com. Use promo code 420radio and you can get 10% off your purchase. On today's show, we revisit with one of our favorite guests, longtime contributor to the Russ Belville Show. Dr. Mitch Earlywine joins us from SUNY Albany. He's still snowed in New York, but he's going to call in and we're going to talk all sorts of new studies out about marijuana, including a study showing that marijuana is certainly no more harmful than other drugs, and in fact, the least harmful popular drug out there. A study on marijuana use in car accidents, a study on so-called skunk weed and psychosis, a study on pot and the munchies, and a study on marijuana and ADHD. We've had a few studies piling up while Dr. Mitch has been away. We'll get to all of them, plus take your live questions at 971-533-7111, or join us in our chat room. Go to 420radio.org and click the green chat button to join in. Also on the show today, we'll have time for a radical rant at the end of the show, and we're going to talk about the spectrum of high and how it is people who are anti-marijuana just can't understand that there are many levels between sober and high, and how that affects the debates around marijuana legalization. That's coming up at the end of the show. Also on the show today, we're going to do some drug war data mining. I'm going to take you through some of the state websites for medical marijuana among the 23 states that have legalized it, and show you just how there is a dearth of information, statistical information, on the use of medical marijuana in those states. It's very hard to come by, but we'll show you what data is out there and what that means about medical marijuana. Also on the show today, and behind the headlines, we're going to take a look at Native Americans who are reacting to the U.S. Department of Justice giving them the green light to move forward with marijuana sales, cultivation, and so forth on tribal lands. And it's interesting, the marijuana may not be what they're interested in. They may be using it as leverage to get more casino deals in the South. We'll tell you all about that coming up right after the 420 Radio News. And in the headlines today, we've got that study about marijuana being safer than previously thought. Marijuana becomes officially legal in Alaska tomorrow and officially legal in Washington, D.C. sometime later this week. We're also going to take a look at the state of Missouri, where Montel Williams is flown down there to try to help pass medical marijuana in the Show Me State. And the Republicans in Florida, who were anti-medical marijuana just a year ago, are suddenly very pro-medical marijuana after that defeat of the medical marijuana amendment got more votes statewide than most of them got. All of that coming up on the first hour of the Russ Belville Show. Then stay tuned for hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We take your live calls, relax, and tell you a little bit more about what's happening in the world of marijuana. Plus, Bacon Dan will be in studio, a special in-studio guest for our Roots Monday Daily Toker Tunes. The 420 Radio News is next, right after these commercial messages.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. Oregon has joined Washington and Colorado in legalizing marijuana. We're Portland NORML, the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws chapter in Portland, Oregon. Join us as we celebrate the launch of an exciting new era in marijuana freedom in Oregon. Our job has just begun. Powerful interests want to white out the most important portions of Oregon's legalization law. By joining Portland NORML, you add your voice to the thousands who voted for Measure 91 and want it to be implemented as written. The people have spoken. Now it is time for the legislature to obey the will of the people. Find out more about Portland NORML at portlandnormal.org. Attend our monthly membership meetings on the fourth Saturday of the month. See our website for more details. Portland NORML, ensuring responsible adult marijuana consumers are afforded the same rights, privileges, and responsibilities as beer drinkers.
I like it like that.
Well, I don't know what you came to do, but what we came to do.
That's right, baby. We're keeping the funk alive right here at Big Daddy Fink's Funky Roller Ring, your groovy home of soul, funk, and disco. So join me, Big Daddy, every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific at the Funky Roller Ring, where every night is Saturday night.
This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay. Read the Weed Blog today. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Monday, February 23rd, 2015. Compared with other recreational drugs, including alcohol, marijuana may be even safer than previously thought, and researchers may be systematically underestimating risks associated with alcohol use. Those are the top-line findings of recent research published in the journal Scientific Reports, a subsidiary of Nature. Researchers found that at the level of individual use, alcohol was the deadliest substance, followed by heroin and cocaine. Marijuana was roughly 114 times less deadly than booze, according to the authors, who ran calculations that compared lethal doses of a given substance with the amount that a typical person uses. Given the relative risks associated with marijuana and alcohol, the authors recommend, quote, risk management prioritization towards alcohol and tobacco rather than illicit drugs, end quote. And they say when it comes to marijuana, the low amounts of risk associated with the drug, quote, suggest a strict legal regulatory approach rather than the current prohibition approach, end quote. Marijuana becomes legal in Alaska tomorrow, but where it will be allowed to be used remains a bit hazy. Public consumption of pot remains prohibited, but local leaders continue to debate the definition of public place. Public place is defined in Alaska criminal statutes as, quote, a place to which the public or a substantial group of persons has access, end quote. The statute lists about a dozen examples, including schools, parks, highways, bus stops, businesses, and apartment building lobbies and hallways. Possessing an ounce of marijuana outside of the home by a person 21 or older will be legal under the law approved by voters in November. Consuming marijuana in public remains illegal and is punishable by a $100 fine. The law also allows people older than 21 to have 6 marijuana plants and to trade pot. Regulations enacting provisions of the new law pertaining to the setting up and licensing of marijuana retail establishments are required to be in place later this year. Marijuana legalization in Washington, D.C. will take effect at the end of the week unless Congress acts to stop it. Ever since Initiative 71, which will allow district residents to legally possess up to 2 ounces of marijuana, was overwhelmingly passed through a voter initiative, lawmakers and residents alike have feared that some members of Congress would prevent it from taking effect as they're wont to do. There was even that rider in the House Appropriation Committee's $1.1 trillion spending bill barring the district from implementing marijuana legalization. But the legislation was submitted to Congress for the 30-day review period, and it's looking like it'll pass. D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton says that, quote, unless a resolution of disapproval overturning it is enacted during that period, or other legislation is enacted before, during, or after that period that blocks or overturns it, end quote, D.C. will be legal by the weekend. Montel Williams is joining a Missouri Republican in efforts to allow patients with specific ailments access to medical marijuana with a state-monitored distribution program. A House committee on Monday will consider a bill that would set up a process for patients to register for access to marijuana for cancer, HIV, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other medical conditions. Republican Representative Dave Hinson's bill would not allow recreational use of marijuana. It would require growers and distributors of medical marijuana to be licensed and follow certain security procedures. Williams, a TV personality with multiple sclerosis, uses marijuana to treat some of his symptoms and will testify in support of the bill. He says Missouri could be a model for other states. Republican lawmakers in Florida who once opposed medical pot are now embracing it, motivated by the strong show of support from voters and worried that another constitutional amendment during next year's presidential race could drive opponents to the polls. It got about 58% of the vote in November, but needed 60% to pass under Florida law. That sent a powerful message to legislators in Tallahassee. Amendment 2 garnered more support than any statewide candidate and served as the impetus for the introduction of medical marijuana bills for the legislative session, which begins March 3rd. A sticking point in Florida is just who exactly would be allowed to use medical pot. Both the Senate and House proposals would permit people with certain conditions to use it, including AIDS, epilepsy, Lou Gehrig's disease, and multiple sclerosis. But the House version wouldn't allow it for people with chronic pain, nausea, or seizures, or other debilitating illnesses that aren't included on the list. This has been your 420 Radio News for Monday, February 23rd, 2015. I'm Russ Belville. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. Get your tickets now for the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference March 15th and 16th at the Hilton in Eugene, Oregon, powered by MarijuanaPolitics.com. Former presidential candidate and two-term New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson will deliver the keynote address. Harborside Health Center's Steve D'Angelo will present at the pre-conference VIP reception. You'll also hear from State Senator Floyd Przansky, New Approach Oregon's Anthony Johnson, Oregon marijuana attorneys Paul Loney and Leland Berger, and Oregon Liquor Control Commission's Director of Marijuana Programs, Tom Burns. Get your tickets at early bird pricing by acting now. Learn more at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference at ommbc.com. This conference will provide you with a head start for success in the expanding Oregon marijuana industry. Get your tickets today at ommbc.com.
Tokers, there's no good reason to get your dog stoned. While it might not harm them physically, imagine being a dog who already begs for treats all day, and then imagine that dog having the munchies.
With over 1 billion people in the world, chances are there's somebody out there just like you. There are software engineers, pastry chefs, artists, and people with medical conditions. And what do many of these people have in common? They use marijuana. It's expected that marijuana will be legalized in California. And when that happens, what will be the biggest concern? Safety. That's where we come in. High Def Transit is a discreet shuttle service that also serves as a mobile vapor room. Members can medicate on board, while our certified drivers get you to your destination safely, so you can enjoy the ride. So hop in, make friends, and ride safe. High Def Transit.
Welcome back, everyone. Time for us to go behind the headlines, and we're taking a look at the effect of the Department of Justice announcing just last month that Native American tribes, like the U.S. states, would be allowed to proceed with plans to cultivate, regulate, and sell marijuana on their tribal properties. This takes us to a story that I picked up off of Alabama.com, where the Porch Creek Indians, a Native American tribe that has land in Florida and Alabama, is using the threat of marijuana sales as leverage in their negotiations with state governments. This is quite fascinating to me. It's not the marijuana they're interested in so much as casino gambling. According to the story on Alabama.com, the Porch Creek Indians are offering an ultimatum to the state of Florida. Either allow them to set up tribal casinos in the state, or they will consider growing and selling marijuana on their tribal lands. Now, there's a similar situation going on in the state of Alabama. There's a lawsuit trying to shut down casinos that already exist in Alabama, and it's basically the same kind of threat: back off of the lawsuit, or the Porch Creek Indians will start selling marijuana on their tribal lands in Alabama. Now, this is an interesting tactic because we know that there are Native American tribal lands all across this country, and not all of the states have been so sanguine on those tribes beginning their casino gaming. There's tons of Indian casinos in the Pacific Northwest, in California, and so forth. But in interior states and southern states, it's just not as common. It remains to be seen whether other native tribes will take up this tactic. But to me, the threat that they'll grow weed in order to get casinos, it makes you wonder if the states wouldn't just be better off letting them grow the weed. There's all sorts of studies to show the problems that gaming can introduce into a society. Marijuana, not so much. So maybe the states would be wise to just allow this to happen. But given the cannabiphobia that is exhibited by Southern legislators, I think probably they'll give on the casinos before they'll give on the Indian land, or the marijuana being grown on the native lands. But this is an interesting tactic that I think will show us opportunities for marijuana legalization all across this country. Now, there's a similar thing going on based on Indian gaming and casino gaming just in general going on in Ohio, where the Responsible Ohio group that has proposed a 10-grower oligopoly is basically taking a page out of the casino playbook. Ohio hadn't any casinos, and they made a casino amendment in 2009 that was funded by the casino gaming industry, one particular company, and it set in the Constitution 4 locations for casinos that just all happen to be run by that same company. They're taking a page out of that playbook, trying to make the same thing happen with marijuana in the state of Ohio. And as these native tribes continue to flex their muscle with respect to sovereignty over casino gaming and now over marijuana farming and commerce, it'll be interesting to see whether or not Native Americans make marijuana de facto legal in most of the United States. There are over 100 native tribes that have expressed some sort of interest in marijuana, whether it is recreational growing, medical growing, or just industrial hemp. And given that the native lands are spread all across this country, especially in red states and more conservative areas of the country, this could be the only way that we see legalized marijuana making its way into some of those places. Although there is the opportunity to pass it at the federal level, of course, Colorado Representative Jared Polis has introduced the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol Act at the federal level that would remove marijuana from the federal schedule and place it under the purview of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. That would be federal legalization, but with a Republican-controlled Congress, it's not likely that that bill is going to pass the House. Although these days, it might be hard to tell. Some of these legislators, as we've seen in Florida, are getting more supportive of marijuana issues as they realize finally that the voters are behind reforming marijuana laws. maybe Representative Polis's bill could be moved along by these native tribes threatening to legalize on their lands. And the feds at least might want to have some say in how it's done.
You're really clouding the energy in this room right now.
All right. Well, hey, it's 4:20 in the Mountain Time Zone. That sounds like it's time for us to cloud up a room or two. Hope you're having a great day. It's a beautiful spring day here in Portland. Boy, if I was going to cancel the show to take a mental health day, this would have been the kind of day to do it. Temperatures approaching 60 degrees, sunny, not a cloud in the sky. We're back with some drug war data mining right after this.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. Are you in the market for portable vaporizers now? Get online to vapes.buzz, the quick and easy link to portablevaporizers.now.com. Vapes.buzz has everything you are looking for, including vape pens, herbal vaporizers, e-juice, parts, accessories, and more. Visit vapes.buzz and use promo code 420radio to get 10% off your online purchase, or just give them a call at 866-264-2415. Vapes.buzz. Get vaping, baby! Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Welcome back, everyone. And in the Drug War Data Mines today, we're going to talk about a very simple question that is almost impossible to answer, and that is, how many legal medical marijuana patients are there in this country? You'd think that would be a question with an easy answer, since in all medical marijuana states except Washington and California, the patients are required to register in their state. But not all of the states, in fact, very few of the states make that data readily publicly available. For some of this, you might be able to call into their medical marijuana programs. For other states, there's just no reliable information to come by. But there are 4 states that have been reliably and consistently providing statistical information on their medical marijuana programs. Those would be Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, and Rhode Island. And you can find the links to every medical marijuana state program by going to medicalmarijuana.procon.org. That's medicalmarijuana.procon.org. And as you scroll down, you'll find information just in general. On the left side of the screen, there will be a link to the 23 states with medical marijuana programs. Within that page, you can find the links to all of the state medical marijuana programs, including copies of the law, how to apply in your particular state, what conditions are covered, what the limits are, and so forth. It's a great resource, medicalmarijuana.procon.org. Now, I took a look earlier today at these 4 states that have some reliable information. And from the 4, we get some good general information about medical marijuana. In the state of Arizona, they have a year-end report for 2014. And that year-end report tells us that there are 61,272 patients in the state of Arizona and only 639 designated caregivers. Of the qualifying patients, the over 61,000 of them, about 70% of them are male, and the average age was about 44 years old. I always think this is a very significant statistic because as you look at the rates of use among the general public, what we would call recreational or personal use of marijuana, the average age of a regular old marijuana user in this country is somewhere around 27 to 29 years old. The peak of marijuana use happens between ages 16 to 25. So when we're finding on medical marijuana program registries that the average ages are over the age of 40, it does show us that, one, people are really using these for medical purposes. And number two, regulation skews the average age to an older demographic. The reason that the regular demographic of marijuana smokers tends toward the youth is because the youth are the ones with access. They're the ones in high school or college who have a guy. Generally, you get out of college, you get married, you got a job, you ease off or quit your marijuana use. But in medical marijuana states, people who can find benefit from marijuana in their middle age and their old age have that access to marijuana, and thus the demographic age is raised. The average age is raised. Now, also in the state of Arizona, we find that 71% of the people that are getting medical marijuana are qualifying under the condition of chronic pain. Now, that may not be the only condition they're qualifying under. Most of these states allow, other than, I believe, New Mexico, allow you to indicate more than one condition you may be suffering from. So you may qualify for cancer, but certainly cancer causes a whole lot of pain. And that's why when the prohibitionists bring up numbers about how so many people are qualifying for pain and they must be faking, they, number one, fail to understand that people have pain with almost any other of the conditions. And number two, chronic pain is severely underaddressed in American society. 1 out of 4 people is suffering from some form of chronic pain. Now, looking at another state, we can turn to the state of Colorado, where they have 113,453 valid registry cards, patient cards out there. 65% of the people applying for medical marijuana cards are male, and the average age of all patients, age 42, once again, over the age of 40, with 93% reporting treatment for chronic pain among all their conditions. In the state of Oregon, we now are close to 70,000. We have 69,865 patients, but we also have 34,914 caregivers. Oregon's very lenient about allowing a person to designate a caregiver. Thus, we have almost 100,000 legal card holders in this state who can possess up to 1.5 pounds of marijuana each. 92% of the patients are qualifying with chronic pain. And in Rhode Island, the tiny state, there's only 4,847 patients, 3,415 caregivers, and 44% of them are reporting chronic pain. Pain is by far the most listed condition in any of the medical marijuana states, but as we pointed out, treatment for chronic pain is severely underutilized in this country. For more information on all of these medical marijuana states, remember to check out the website medicalmarijuana.procon.org or email me, radicalruss@gmail.com.
420 Radio, the activist radio station. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you're detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective.
Check out lushledlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times Magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
Welcome back, everybody. Half past the hour on a Monday, and that means it's time we speak with Dr. Mitch Earlywine from SUNY Albany. How you doing, Dr. Mitch?
Cold but happy.
Cold and happy. Is it still snowed in?
Fortunately, no, but it was in the single digits again today, so we're just trying to stay bundled up.
Oh, my gosh. And me, I was walking in shirt sleeves out here in Portland. It was 60 and sunny. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, folks, get your questions ready in our chat room. We're taking them now, or you can call in to 971-533-7111. But we always give Dr. Mitch the first word to tell us what's the latest in cannabis science.
A veritable plethora in the news today, everything from ADHD to skunk and psychosis, the biology of the munchies, and more professional ratings suggesting marijuana's probably a lot safer than we were told in junior high.
Let's get to that first. That's the one I saw on the Washington Post Wonk blog today, saying marijuana may be even safer than previously thought. What are the details of this study?
What's interesting is this is at least the third attempt to try to sort of rate drugs by their harmfulness, but using relatively different techniques. And on this one, cannabis, of course, is markedly safer than alcohol, heroin, cocaine, tobacco, ecstasy, and meth. But that's really not any surprise to us. But it wasn't the usual approach Bob Gore and I took, or that David Nutt had taken in a comparable study, and still comes to the same conclusion. So I feel like basically this kind of ranking approach, no matter how you do it, seems to keep coming to the same conclusion that marijuana is just not going to be a big problem.
Well, it was interesting. One of the lines in there said that marijuana is 114 times less lethal than alcohol. But, I mean, isn't it infinitely less lethal since you can't die from it?
I mean, in truth, that 114, as big as that sounds, is kind of an underestimate. The occasional, cannabis-induced tachycardia right before a heart attack is getting a lot of play. But compared to alcohol, this drug just doesn't have any association with death at all.
Oh, sorry, we're having some chaos in the studio. Bacon Man has just come in, and Roscoe has gone crazy. So sorry for all the barking in the background. That's our alarm system hard at work. Very low tech here at 420 Radio. Let's get to this next study. This one came out a week or two ago, and it said that there was no link between marijuana and car crash accidents. And this was pretty surprising because, Kevin Sabet tells me we're twice as likely to get in wrecks, and, he wouldn't lie.
Well, unfortunately, Kevin's not on top of the data. But the bottom line here is that, in fact, when you take really good care to check out the National Highway statistics for a specific area where people are actually under the influence of marijuana at the time, what a surprise. You see at most a 5% increase in culpability of accidents, and it's just not statistically significant. This was a study of over 3,000 drivers. The crashes were in a 20-month period, so we can't say, oh, hey, the study's not big enough, or there just weren't enough people, or something like that. And lo and behold, we're not getting the kinds of increases anywhere near what you get at blood alcohol concentrations, even at 0.02 or 0.04. And I really feel like, I'm all for a highway sobriety test. If you want to pull me over and have me juggle and ride a unicycle, I'm happy to do it. But just the presence of cannabis in the system is not enough to assume impaired driving.
So what accounts for that statistic that they've been throwing at us for years that we're twice as likely? I mean, they used to say it was from the British Medical Journal. How did they come up with this 2 times greater risk?
Well, so what was funny was in the early 2000s, they had a big data set based on a couple of different areas, but they were using basically urine screens. So some of the folks weren't high at the time. They also often were confounding alcohol and cannabis and trying to control for that statistically, which just doesn't make any sense from a mathematical standpoint. And so we get this, 12 times as likely, 2 times as likely, and things like that. And in fact, a good epidemiologist, when something is less than twice as big, isn't going to make a huge deal out of that sort of effect. And that was pretty much what we were getting. And it really was statistically significant only because the sample sizes were so huge.
Along those lines, we got a question from our chat room asking that we don't have a general roadside impairment test yet. Why not?
Well, what's intriguing is at least some of the roadside sobriety tests that we've used for alcohol can be adapted pretty readily to detect cannabis-related impairments. But the notion that, you're going to, have a sort of breathalyzer type test the way we have with alcohol just isn't panning out. And I think the science is probably just a little bit behind on that. What I would prefer, of course, is something that correlates with driving ability regardless of the source of impairment. So if you were too tired, or if you took a Benadryl, or if you were on anything or under any kind of circumstances where you weren't capable of driving, it would detect it no matter what. And that, regardless of what was in your system, it would just be what is your capability to actually drive.
All right, we've got another study. This one comes from across the pond, and it's warning us that the super potent, hyper, not your father's Woodstock weed skunk is going to cause psychotic episodes. I'm ready to go psycho any moment, Dr. Mitch. Tell me it's not true.
Well, sad but true. The headlines are all saying can cause or things like that, and that just is not a kind of explanation we can make from these data. All these are correlational and correlational alone. We have no idea if folks who are prone to psychosis are just attracted to skunk in the first place, which actually, given some of THC's and CBD's effects, may actually, make some sense. So with this kind of correlational approach, the causal reasoning has got to go out the window. Now, we have seen that, some high-potency THC with no cannabidiol at all in the lab has made people have some psychotic-like experiences, but it's not the same as causing a psychotic disorder. And then what really bothers me is that some sources in the news are saying it's schizophrenia, and this is not schizophrenia at all. Schizophrenia is a really serious syndrome with a whole lot of symptoms, not just the kind of modest magical ideation or delusional thinking that we see in response to THC.
All right, there's one other interesting study that purports to tell us how pot gives people the munchies. I mean, we know it does, but why?
Well, what's curious is this one actually was one of those things where they weren't actually looking for a cannabis-related finding. They were actually trying to understand satiety, how we feel full, and it led them down this path where they ended up using one of the synthetic cannabis things. And I don't want to make too much of this because it's really not THC they're playing with. They're playing with CB1 agonists that are full agonists that really get those neurons to fire. And what they found was, the poor rodents ate that rodent chow, which can't be particularly appetizing, 3 or 4 times as much as they usually would. Obviously, the mechanism that they proposed are these certain POMC neurons. They actually are usually part of how you stop eating, and so to get them to react in this way was pretty novel and a pretty interesting finding, but it's a few steps away from actual human munchies related to cannabis because it's both a strong CB1 agonist and it's really not people.
All right, and this other story that I found quite interesting had to do with teens who use marijuana who are suffering from ADHD and a computer program that could possibly help them out. This seems pretty complex. Maybe you can break it down for us.
Sure. What they're using here is what's called the NBAC task, which is a way to train your memory to essentially work better, to be able to hold more in your working memory. If you can imagine, Russ, I've got a series of pluses and minuses I'm going to flash on the screen, and I'm going to ask you, what was the symbol 2 before the one you're looking at right now? Obviously, that's going to be pretty tough, but it's something that you would get better at with practice. Folks with ADHD hate this task. I mean, hate it. And they actually do get better. It's unclear if it's going to generalize to paying attention to this task to paying attention in daily life, but there are at least some promising small sample studies that suggest it could improve with this kind of training. Now, the cannabis-using folks, some of the work that my student Mallory has done and some other work suggests that this particular sustained attention issue is one that people who use marijuana in response to ADHD seem to claim marijuana helps with, and so they may be a good target for this kind of training in order to improve their symptoms simply by improving their working memory abilities.
That's really fascinating. I saw a special recently with Penn Jillette, the Vegas entertainer, and he had a nail gun. And if you have a nail gun, they have these strips of nails that are fed into the nail gun, but the nail gun will still fire air if there isn't a nail in one particular hole. And the entire act was a memory act where he has memorized the pattern of nail, nail, no nail, no nail, nail, no nail, nail, and so forth along this strip. It must have been 70 or 80 nails long. And he's holding a nail gun up to his hand and up to people's heads as he's doing this act. And of course, when he pulls the trigger and it's just a hole, no nail comes through. I guess it could also be noted that Penn Jillette has never touched a drug in his life. I don't know if I'd want to try this after my history of using marijuana, Dr. Mitch. Is this something that could help people that even don't have ADHD?
In fact, it's interesting because working memory does improve, and it's curious because you'll find yourself after this kind of training capable of just holding a lot of information in your mind at once in a way that you hadn't, say, 3 months earlier. And it's an intriguing effect, but it's not essential to the kinds of jobs you and I have, Russ. So, I mean, if we're going to start doing performances in Las Vegas, maybe things would be different, or if we want to compete in the Memory Olympics. But otherwise, if you don't have any ADHD symptoms, it's unclear that there's a whole lot of benefit to putting out this kind of effort.
All right. Well, Dr. Mitch Earlywine is one of the acknowledged experts on marijuana research. And if you'd like to get in touch with him directly, you can always send him an email at 420research@gmail.com. Have you got any new studies coming up?
In fact, the edibles data that everybody's been so helpful with are finally getting analyzed, and my new grad student, Stacy Farmer, is going to take a close look at those this week. And then we're interviewing our prospective grad students for the following year, so we may be a little slow on the uptake, but I'll get those results out to everybody as soon as I can.
It's got to be a huge list to get on to be Dr. Mitch's grad student, doesn't it?
I got to admit, there are a few people who wanted to make it to interview weekend who aren't going to make it.
Oh, well, good luck to everybody who did make it. Dr. Mitch, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right, folks, stay tuned for the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. And following that, we've got time for a radical rant. Understanding the spectrum of getting high. Why is that so important to making sure prohibitionists understand where we're coming from? Stay tuned.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the home of marijuana experts. You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, you telling me marijuana's gonna mess up my concentration? I ain't gonna worry about that.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. He made some remarks last year that were forwarded to me on Twitter today, and it brought me back to this concept I've been wanting to talk about for a while. He's basically repeated these tired old cliches about those of us who choose marijuana rather than alcohol. He was speaking to the Badger State Sheriff's Association. Gotta love that name. It'd only be better if it was the Honey Badger State Sheriff's Association. But Governor Walker told the reporters there that the sheriffs had urged him not to support marijuana use in the state of Wisconsin. No legalization for Wisconsin because, quote, they're still very concerned that marijuana was a gateway drug, end quote. Yes, there are still people who believe that choosing to consume cannabis leads a person inexorably to the heroin needle. Of course, this scare tactic goes all the way back to the 1950s. There was propaganda films showing reefer-mad teens falling prey to the deadly narcotics. And, I've always thought that this gateway theory is kind of a weak marketing tactic, don't you? I mean, what? Weed's so boring you have to hype it by connecting it to something more powerful? It's like teasing your straight-to-DVD frat boy comedy with, if you loved the frat boy hijinks of Animal House, you're gonna love, whatever this crap piece of movie is. But it's held on for over 65 years now because, well, there is a kernel of truth to it. Statistically speaking, the first illegal drug a heroin addict may have tried is likely to be marijuana. And that's where the sheriffs are on this issue. Their job brings them into first contact with all these people that are suffering the worst drug addictions. To them, and to a lot of people, illegal drug use is just one big scary thing. It's like air travel. Now, you can show them statistics that air travel is incredibly safe. But when they see plane crash after plane crash, they don't think about this issue rationally. To them, an overdose death of a heroin addict is like a plane crash. And smoking marijuana is air travel. Yeah, it's incredibly unlikely any one plane trip is going to lead to a crash, but you'll never die in a plane crash if you don't take a first flight, right? Now, their blind spot, of course, is that they're only considering air travel and ignoring the fact that the land travel they engage in every day is immensely more dangerous. The cars in this stretched metaphor would be ethanol use, good old-fashioned booze. The only sure way to avoid a car crash would be to never ride in one, right? And yet, people who are terrified of air travel think nothing of driving a car and would never warn anyone else not to drive one. These are those people that are terrified, oh, there's more dispensaries than Starbucks. And they're yet unconcerned that there are buildings with parking lots in every city's downtown district where people go inside for the express purpose of enjoying a drug that is guaranteed to significantly increase their crash risk. We call them bars. Nobody ever seriously proposes that adults should never drink alcohol, especially in Wisconsin. But Governor Walker supports locking up adults who choose a far safer recreational choice of marijuana. Whenever someone brings up the gateway theory, I ask them if they ever rode a bicycle as a kid. And almost everyone has, so I follow that up by telling them I used to play music in outlaw biker bars. When I talked to the guys in these motorcycle gangs, almost every one of them told me they started out on a bicycle. So clearly, riding bicycles is the gateway to the Hells Angels. No, it just means that riding bicycles is a common first step in a progression that leads to motorcycle riding. It doesn't mean all bicyclists are going to ride motorcycles, or even that all motorcyclists are going to join biker gangs. And actually, most bicyclists never go on to ride motorcycles, just as most marijuana consumers never go on to use harder drugs. Look, the Institute of Medicine back in 1999 put this gateway theory to rest, explaining that, quote, in fact, most drug users do not begin their drug use with marijuana. They begin with alcohol and nicotine, usually when they are too young to do so legally. There is no evidence that marijuana serves as a stepping stone on the basis of its particular physiological effect, end quote. And numerous follow-up studies have verified these facts. But there is a gateway that exists for marijuana, and that is the gateway to the illegal drug marketplace. There's a reason they don't call alcohol a gateway drug to heroin, even though far more heroin addicts have tried alcohol than marijuana. It's because there's no cocaine on the grocery store shelf next to the beer, and there's no heroin on the liquor store shelf next to the tequila. Marijuana is only a gateway to illegal drugs by the virtue of putting the word illegal in front of it. Regulate marijuana and place it in adults-only stores where only marijuana is sold and where identification is checked, and you've taken away any possible marketing opportunity for a drug dealer to push something harder onto his weed customers. But Scott Walker can't understand that because there is a block in most people's heads where they cannot understand that alcohol is a drug and that they accept it and tolerate it, and it's far more dangerous. And they can't place the societal context to marijuana like they can with alcohol. That was illustrated as Governor Walker continued his discussions. He was talking again to the media right after talking to the Badger State Sheriffs. And this is what he said, quote, "If I'm at a wedding reception here and someone has a drink or two, most people wouldn't say they're wasted. Most folks with marijuana wouldn't be sitting around a wedding reception smoking marijuana. Now, there are people who abuse alcohol, no doubt about it, but I think it's a big jump between someone having a beer and smoking marijuana," end quote. Now see, folks, this is the old drinkers consume to be social, tokers consume to get high rationalization. And it's well over 40 years old now. It's a mindset espoused by the father of the modern drug war, Richard Nixon, Tricky Dick, in a conversation that was recorded on the Nixon tapes between President Nixon and TV personality Art Linkletter. Now, if you don't know, Art Linkletter was this 50s variety show host, had a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things. Your grandparents know who he is. For this discussion, what's important is his daughter, Diane, died, jumped out a window and died, and he originally blamed it on an LSD overdose, but then she wasn't found to have any LSD in her system, so they found she'd had LSD 6 months earlier, and Linkletter said, well, she had a flashback then and killed herself. Whatever, it's sad that she died, but he, from that point on, went to blame all drug use, all drugs are bad, and of course, marijuana is the stepping stone to all of them. So here is the conversation between Linkletter and President Nixon over 40 years ago. Linkletter starts by saying, "Another big difference between marijuana and alcohol is that when people smoke marijuana, they smoke it to get high. In every case, when most people drink, they drink to be sociable. You don't see people," and then Nixon interrupts, "That's right, that's right. They sit down with a marijuana cigarette to get high. A person does not drink to get drunk. That's right. A person drinks to have fun. I'd say smoke marijuana. You smoke marijuana to get high. Smoke marijuana and you want to get some charge of some sort and float and this, that, and the other thing." My apologies for the lousy Nixon impersonation, but still, I do what I can. Sorry to break it to Governor Walker and to the late President Nixon, but I've been to the wedding receptions where people are sitting around smoking marijuana. Wouldn't they be surprised to learn that adults who are gathered in a small circle passing a joint are in fact being incredibly social? And I've always felt that this myth owes to two circumstances. One, the lack of differentiation about what high can be. And two, the effect marijuana can have on a new initiate. Let's start with that first one. Think about how many words you can come up with that are synonyms for alcohol consumption. A lot of them, huh, right? Drinking is this spectrum for most people that begins at socializing. I'm just going to have a drink to be social. And then it runs through tipsy. Ooh, had a couple drinks, feel a little tipsy. To buzzed. Ooh, man, I really got a buzz on. To partying. Woohoo, we're partying. To drunk. To hammered. And then it ends somewhere at passed out and puking, right? But people understand that these levels of ethanol intoxication, and they also see the first few levels as not only socially acceptable, but a civil right for responsible adults. It's okay to get tipsy. It's expected to get buzzed, and so forth. But then there's marijuana consumption, and to most people, there is not smoking marijuana, and there is getting high. They perceive of no gradients between abstinence and something they perceive as like getting drunk. Any pot smoking is as socially reprehensible as chugging wine from the bottle at the party solely to get drunk. That's the way Nixon and Linkletter and Walker and all these people think of it. And part of why some of those people don't perceive any gradients is because for those who have tried marijuana, once or twice, there are no gradients. Ethanol consumers can develop a tolerance, but a great deal of how much drinking will affect a person depends on how much they drank and how big they are. Now, for a new drinker, even someone who's never drank before, there is a detectable range of effect between the first beer and the sixth beer. But with marijuana consumption, tolerance has a great deal to do with developing those gradients between abstinence and high. For example, I'm a daily marijuana consumer. If I smoke a puff off a joint, I'm going to feel that to the same extent that a daily drinker is going to feel the alcohol in his mouthwash. To get me to high, I'm going to have to load up a couple of large dabs of concentrate or eat all of a powerful pot brownie. There are many levels in between for me, like socializing, relaxed, lifted, high, couch locked, over-medicated, and then that also ends up passed out somewhere. But the new marijuana consumer who has no marijuana tolerance has this really short distance to go from socializing to high to passed out. For a lot of them, that single puff on a joint took them straight to high, and they didn't like it, and they never consumed marijuana again. But that memory lingers, and they figure everyone who is smoking pot still goes from sober to high in 1 or 2 puffs. But despite that, Governor Walker isn't relating to that as much as he is the illegal nature of marijuana consumption. The shocking thing about marijuana at his hypothetical wedding reception is only the illegal status of it. Plenty of people at the reception are consuming ethanol and nicotine. And as marijuana continues its inexorable march toward legalization, socializing with cannabis will become more acceptable. And Scott Walker can join Governor Wallace as governors whose prejudiced views were on the wrong side of history. Well, I'm not exactly sure why, but Lieber Mater decided that Cab Calloway had to be played there. And I'm not going to interrupt Cab. Hell no. That's all the time we got for Hour 1, but stay tuned for Hour 2. Toker Talk Radio will take your calls at 971-533-7111. And we got Bacon Dan here.
Hello. I'm here.
He's here. He's going to give us some Roots Monday Daily Toker tunes for the day, and we'll just chill out and talk about Portland, because it's gorgeous out. For everyone here at 420radio.org, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow